Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for this episode of the Jake Lloyd Show. Please let me know how the audio and the video look to you. We are Trying something new. We had to work out some tech stuff before the show got started. It looks like we're good though. So thank you all for your patience. I know we're starting a bit late. As I always say, I try to be on time. I try to be punctual. The later you are, the worse your show gets. So I try to be right on time as often as possible. So today we're joined by a very special guest. Thank you all for tuning in for today's episode. I know this has been much anticipated, and I'm sure that you're not disappointed. I tweeted out that we'd have a special guest on today, and everybody was very excited about it. And so I trust that you won't be disappointed today. We are joined by David Carlson, the president of APU. We're very excited to have him on. Let me go ahead and get him live here. All right. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. David, how are you today?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks. Sorry about the train wreck we're having to deal with right here, but we appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad to be. I think APU is doing great work. I think y'all are doing a fantastic job. So I'm very pleased and honored by your presence, by a fellow Anglo Protestant today, right? I assume.
Yeah, Anglo-Scandinavian. There's a lot.
Hey, Northern European. We're all on the same team
That's
here.
right, that's right. No, that's right. Protestant, of course, but
yeah, the
no,
most
really
important thing.
Yeah.
All right.
So
go ahead.
I'm glad to see you back streaming, and I'm super excited to get into things. So yeah, what do we got?
Awesome. Well, I would imagine that most of the audience here is familiar with APU on some level. I'm sure that they've at least seen you around on Twitter or YouTube. Maybe they've watched the conference last year. But before we get too far into anything, I want to give you an opportunity to explain to the audience, in your own words, what the purpose of APU is, what your stated goal is. And then what you've been doing and what you plan to do in the future.
Yeah, so the American Populist Union is a nonprofit organization that is its intention is to educate and equip young activists who believe in the Trump message, who believe in the idea of making America great again. And we do that through mainly two ways. So we have our online content where we talk about various topics, kind of PragerU, but based. We've been doing that for we started going weekly in January. And so we've been doing that now for 8 months. And our second kind of program that we have are social events. So we do social events all the time, really. We're ramping those up a lot this year. We had one in Tempe, Arizona, which went very well. John Doyle, Ready Go Politics, 2 congressional candidates, Jerome Davison and Christian Lamar. Really great time there. We had a lot more attendance than we expected. I'm very thankful to the audience there. We have an event coming up in New York, another one in Florida, another one in Texas, another one in Arizona, and that's just the ones we have planned so far for the year. And a lot of that's in early phases, but the purpose is for people to be able to get to know one another, come together and kind of collaborate, get people offline and into real political circles. That's what happened with me, and that's how I got into politics. I was online. I was reading Buchanan and Francis in 18, and then I started coming and going to more political events, as you know, like CPAC and SAS and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get into these circles and join the movement. And so I want to enable younger people to be able to do that. And so we want to offer just a place where they can go and make real connections and do real things. So that's what American Populist Union is. Obviously, we have the online aspect of that too, which is just the video content. And we have a lot of big plans in the works that I can't. It's really sad because we're like 3 weeks away from being able to go public with most of them. But I'll just have to come back on, I guess. We'll see.
Yeah. I was going to say I'd love to have you back on to talk about that stuff in the future. And briefly, where can people, if people are interested in these events, where can they find those?
Yeah, so you can actually, the best place where you can tap into what we're doing is Populist Union, at Populist Union on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter. We also have a website, populistunion.com, and that's where you can find us.
Awesome. I also want to give you an opportunity here to explain the name American Populist Union. One thing that we've talked about is this these political words, these political terms have a lot of different meanings depending on who you ask. Like, obviously there's been a lot of debate over what conservatism is in America, what conservative means, whether it means, what exactly we're conserving, to what lengths we're willing to go to conserve the things that we want to conserve. So with populism, you have many people, not just in DC but throughout the country, who have different ideas about what it is. The left holds this word up as kind of a boogeyman. Anytime they're afraid of somebody like Trump, for example, they'll talk about like demagogues and populism. So when you talk about American populism at your events, the purpose of the organization, what is American populism?
Yeah, so I actually have a buddy that I was talking to a little while ago, and he was explaining to me quite harshly. Actually, he was like, "I don't think you're actually populist," and he was making the point that we weren't anti-bank enough, so we haven't put
Mm.
out a video on how bad the banks are. And he's like, "That's really what populism is about." So, like you were saying, there's a bunch of different definitions, but I really think that when we say populist, people think, "Oh, well, the majority of the population wants to legalize weed and all of this, so that's the populist thing to do." And I think it's doing what's in the best interest of the population. So this is more of a a Kirk idea. Russell Kirk and Edmund Burke both believed this. Obviously, it's a core conservative tenet that like we elect representatives to do what's best for the people, whereas Thomas Paine and the liberal tradition was like, no, the people elect representatives to do what they want, to do what the people want. So I think that when we say populist, it's like we want to do what's best for America, and that is Christian, that is national conservatism, or whatever you want to call it, though I kind of shy away from the term conservative now. It's so ineffective. Beautiful losers, a tradition of losing every fight in America. So I think that that means economic protectionism, that means putting families before anything else, that means isolationism, or at least separating ourselves from the global stage and foreign adversaries and foreign interests. So that's when I say populist, it really just means what I want to happen. That's what populism is.
So now you mentioned something. I have two sort of topics today, but I think it'll be better if we kind of blend them together. So today I wanted to talk about APU and the mission and the strategy and all of that. But I also one thing that I think is important for anybody in this in these circles in this world to talk about, and so number one, so we can find out the best ideas and the best way forward, but primarily so that we know where everybody stands, because I think that what I'm about to say is of the utmost importance. We have to know where people stand on this to be able to define who our friends are and who our enemies are, who we can work with, who's really aligned with us. You mentioned you think that Christianity is best for the people. What do you think about Christians in politics? What is the role of what is the role of Christian Americans in politics, and how do you think that Christianity should influence our action in government?
Everything that we do should be informed by our faith, be informed by our Bible, be informed by our tradition, the Bible rather, and be informed by our tradition. And there's some people who like to separate the two. They say, well, I like to be able to justify every single one of my political opinions through secular reasoning. And I think that that's just ludicrous. I think they are inherently combined. I think that secular politics is religious in nature. I think that you can't separate the two. So it's important to go into things like remembering, okay, I am anti-porn, not because it's not because it jacks up your mind or because it ruins families. I'm anti-porn because it's an abomination to God. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's an abomination to man natural order, the natural order of man, which was instilled by God. These objective truths that we have to hold ourselves to. Uh, so that's the influence of religion on my politics. It's everywhere. It's all encompassing. There's no separating the two.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important.
And so, with our worldview being informed by our Christian faith, how does that play into, like, when we're in these positions or we're in politics where we have some sort of influence? How do we exercise, in your opinion, that influence through whatever authority we have, whether it's soft influence or policy making? How do we act out that influence in the real world?
Yeah, so legislating based on morality, legislating our morality, pushing our morality. This is a big thing we've been fighting against. The libertarian right, the normie conservative right, neoconservatism says you can't legislate morality, but all legislation is inherently moral. It is a decision based on morality. Everything is. Um, I don't believe in neutrality. It's good or evil. So we see this with Roe v. Wade is a very relevant example. We must overturn Roe and ban abortion. I'm an abolitionist. I think that abortion must be banned, and I don't think we've gone far enough until it is banned. Now, there's some abolitionists who believe that, because we're not outright banning all abortion right now, that we shouldn't do anything. I think that that's ridiculous. I think that's kind of cope. But yeah, so we should go all the way. We should push our morality in our legislation. We should have prayer in schools. We should have our morality dictate how we read law in the judicial branch. We should have it influence who we hire and who we keep on staff in politics. We should have it decide who we partner with. I am not going to be friends with an atheist or a pagan politically. We might have similar enemies for some time. But at the end of the day, the enemy of my enemy is still like my enemy, and I think that at the end of the day, an atheist, a secularist, a pagan, anyone who believes in a fake god is my enemy.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And by the way, I meant to say this at the beginning. If you have any questions for David before we let him go at the end of the stream, if you want to super chat, you can do so through entropystream.live/Jake Lloyd. We'll review that, and if there are any questions or statements for him, then we'll go over those. So, my opinion, one thing that I believe very firmly, and like it would be too much to get into like the basis of this, but it does relate like the philosophical basis for this. I mean, one thing that I like about what you say and about what APU is doing is getting real people to do real stuff in the real world. It's not purely an online movement. It's not something where we all get together and make jokes and laugh and or despair post or think that we're going to change the country and fix everything by just getting enough views on YouTube. So politically, we can infer like what that means for people, how they should behave. But continuing along the track of spirituality, it's my opinion that sin increases sin in the world. So not just in a direct relationship where if I commit a sin, there's one more sin that's been committed in the world, but that sin, whether it's abortion, abortion being legal and happening, or some of the other moral social issues like the gender theory stuff that's such a big problem right now, that amplifies sin. And similarly, holiness of living amplifies and it emanates outward and increases like the holiness in the world. So I would ask, like, do you agree with that? Do you have a different view of that? And if so, what does that mean for the personal conduct, the personal way of living that people who would like to be political actors should behave in the world?
Yeah, well, I think we're gonna have like an episode of the Dave Rubin Show where we just like agree with each other the whole time, because I mean, no man is an island unto himself, and I think that is very obvious that sin builds sin. It builds on itself. It builds onto other people. It and we see this in the culture too. And when we get into like spiritual warfare talk, like this is something that we see. I think there is a biospirit of a culture, and that can become corrupt, and that plays out in our in our art, in our architecture, in the way we look, in the way we talk, behave, the things we accept, the apathy we have towards wrongness or sin. I think it all goes together, and I mean, ultimately, it's like super cheesy or lame to say, but it all starts with like one person. Like, you are in charge of yourself and what you do, and you need to act in a good way. Now, I believe that like joking and sarcasm, there's some like Protestants that are like, don't do that. I take more of a Douglas Wilson approach, which is like, yeah, Jesus was sarcastic towards the Pharisees and Sadducees, and I will be too. I will be humor and sarcasm because it's fun. And nobody wants to be a part of anything that's incredibly boring.
Right.
So yeah, this like the DC politics. It's um, the crowd is very, there's a lot of them, like the Cicero Debate Society, the club where they go and talk about like um, industrial policy, and and you have to wear a suit and tie. And my buddies, we go in there and we have our polos on and we say, yeah, we don't care. Um, I don't like care about the norms when it comes to that regard. Like the professionalism of it is kind of lame. And so we want to have fun. That's how you can build a movement. And the anti SJW guys almost got this right in like 2017, where they were like, we're the new counterculture. We're Christians and conservatives and left. But the extent of that was like leftism is the dominant culture, and so we're the counterculture just because we exist as a opposition to them. But that's not really what it was about, because it was not only about being in opposition to them, but it was also about being fun, and they never really put that to words. And I think that they didn't hold themselves to those standards, and yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of lame behavior.
Right. Interesting. So you said something there that I want to come back to, but beforehand, I think that this question would be good for us to cover beforehand. So we covered populism. What does populism mean? And you correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like that populism is doing what's best for the populace, for the population, whatever is most in the interest of them, of us, of our nation. But also, so before populism is American. So it's the American Populist Union. So I want to get your thoughts as to what that means for it to be American. Is it the American Populist Union because it's in America? And obviously, I think I know the answer to this. Like, it's a populist union that happens to be in America, and this ethos could be transplanted into somewhere else. Like, obviously, it's not like Marxist, like Bolshevism or anything like this, which seeks to implant itself into various nations and do the same thing but in different areas. Or or is there something unique about this American populism that you strive for?
Yeah, well, there's inherently something unique about every country. There's something different about every country. Something about the borders and the people of the nation. There's something about the sorry about that.
That's
There
okay.
is something about the ethnic makeup of a nation, the religious beliefs, the culture beliefs, the ideas of a nation come into play as well. It is not a idea that makes a nation, but a people which hold to and adhere to certain ideas. And that's what America is. It's Christian. It's homogenous. It is going to promote that in its way of living, in its culture. And anything apart from that that tries to um, saturate that or desaturate it or subvert it is, I think, antithetical to what I believe in, and antithetical to what the American Populist Union wants to do, which is promote America, believe it or not. Like I said, we want to carry on the message of making America great. Take the Trump platform, make a few tweaks where we think he could have done better, social policy for sure, and also actually following through with a lot of the 2016 campaign promises, which we saw kind of falter when the subversion in the White House took place in 2017, 2018 with some other faces like Jared Kushner and
Mm-hmm.
Brooke Rollins and et cetera, et cetera. But that's what we are, the American Pop, and we call ourselves a union. I mean, I'm not a founding member of this team. They came up with the name. I joined the team and kind of took the mantle of presidency not very long ago. And we are a union of like content creators online and young activists, people that are politically interested. We have people behind the scenes that we've known that are working with us. We have people that have made content, that do make content, and we unionize around these ideas and want to make change. Like that's where the union comes into play.
Right.
So
Okay. And so now to go back to what you said your previous answer, you mentioned this idea of like a national like biospirit, and you said that you believe that it can be corrupted or infected with something, and it seeps into uh, other areas of the culture and our like social fabric. So I would ask, do you think that America is sick? Is our national identity, like our national spirit, is it corrupted? Are we dying? And if so, what is it that Like specifically, what is it that's done this to us? Why has this happened?
Yeah, well, that's a heavy question because I think it's an uncomfortable truth that America is dead or dying. I think that our national spirit is dead. I think that our cohesive our national cohesiveness is dead, or it's gone at least. It's depleted to the point of not being really recognizable within the cities. Obviously, middle America is different. There are places in America that are still America, and you really feel this when you're going to Florida. When I went down to SAS last year for the American Populist Summit, our first event where we had Joe Kent and Gavin Wax, Anthony Sabatini, and Kai, and myself, and a lot of other speakers like Vince, obviously. Um, I was driving through Florida. I drove from North Carolina to Florida the whole time, and I was in a convertible. And I remember very distinctly crossing through Middle Florida, and it was like very America. It
Mm,
felt like something you'd see in a film that came out in the 80s or the 90s. It felt very real. There were like peanut stands and like citrus stands, and there was a very distinct, like, it was I was driving there overnight, so I got into Florida maybe at 6 in the morning, and there was a very distinct, like, just a smell of like, this is kind of rural Florida, and there's something about this place that makes me feel at home. So there are definitely places that are still America in America, but in the United States of America, rather. But you go into like a city like DC or Chicago, or you go into Austin or San Francisco, and you are like, yeah, I need a translator. I need someone I need a guide. I need to hire an Uber driver to communicate with the McDonald's order a cash register cashier to like help me get a Big Mac. And so that's a big problem, like that homogeneity that we talked about, in language, in ideas, in religion, is evaporating. And so that, as a result of that, in very dominant areas economically in our culture, we're seeing this ripple throughout the rest of America. Obviously, our birth rates are plummeting everywhere, not just in the cities. So we're seeing a very American area. They're dying. I like to think of, I believe it's Dayton, Georgia, or something like this. They used to go by the carpet capital of the world. They produced all of like the carpets that were all in America. Obviously, all of that's gone. Everyone's on opioids. Everybody
mm,
is leaving. The industry's dead, and nobody's having kids. Nobody's going to church. Everybody's alone. They send their kids off to college in Atlanta, and that becomes like, they become dumb. Um, like, so yeah, and religiosity drops off, and so America is dying, of course, and that has a very distinct effect, whether it's from the top down or the bottom up. I think we can say it's from the top down. I think that we
mm-hmm,
have an elite that hate this country, that hate Americans, that hate people like you and me, that want to see us destroyed and are subverting us actively. I think that they are purposefully like neglecting us in their policy. I think they're not only purposefully neglecting us, but they're maliciously attacking us. Um, and we see that when, in the 1965 Hart-Celler Act. We see that in 1994 when 1991 when George Bush signs trade agreements, and we've seen this since the Kennedys signing trade agreements with Canada, destroying our still manufacturing industry, things like this. So it's economic, it's cultural, it's the adoption of satanic lines, secular lines of thinking, and pushing that in schools, banning our religion from public institutions. And that has had a horrible effect on American culture. We see now with this guy who made the Old Town Road song, who then went on
mm-hmm.
a children's tour to all of these high schools and middle schools, where he like sang this song. It was super meme. It was so fun, and we're gonna take my horse to the Old Town Road, and we're gonna ride. And then he comes out and he's like dancing on Hitler or Satan, and he's like talking about you know sodomy with Satan. It's really egregious. It's disgusting,
Yeah.
and that is a sign of our decline. It's like the people in the industry, and Robbie Starbuck, who's a congressional candidate in Nashville, will talk about this, and I've had the pleasure to talk to him about this. It's that these, because he was in the industry, he directed music videos, and he knows how the search engines and the way the producers and the corporate leaders and the executives think about this. And that was a purposeful like action to have him come out really friendly and then switch it around and make it super controversial to boost engagement, to boost following, to boost controversy. He comes out with like shoes that have blood in them. This is
Mm,
all old news, but this is the proof. Like, we've all talked about this before, but this is the substantive proof that, like, yeah, our culture's in the gutter. And just go outside, drive to your local metro, and you'll see it with your own eyes.
right, right. Um, Something else that you said there, like this idea of, is it top down or bottom up? I certainly think that it's top down, but there's this idea that reemerges every so often, and especially I would say like always in online right circles, maybe in other places too. But this idea that our like government system is innately flawed. I have come to, and I used to think like, well, I don't know that the system itself is totally bad, but I think that some of what was codified was too liberal or was not clear enough, or maybe there should have been other stuff. But that generally it was okay. But I've come around to this idea that, and this your answer to this can be as long or short as you want it to be. I've come to believe that it is top down, but that the problem is not really with our government system that it allowed this to happen, but that it's actually that it's in a sense the fault of the American nation that we were not vigilant enough. Would you agree with that?
The fault of the American nation that wasn't vigilant enough?
Yeah, like there are wolves, there are bad people who want to do bad things with this, and basically that previous generations have um, either not cared about, like with the boomers, one criticism you could just say that, oh, they don't care, or Gen X, they don't care, they think that it's all pointless anyway, so they just don't pay attention to it. And the boomers benefited from the wealth that was coming down the pipeline from the things that America was doing, and so they didn't really have any reason to object to what was being done. Or their generation before them, that there was a lack of vigilance, that there wasn't a conscious intent to prevent these evil people from taking power. Like our founding fathers talk about this, like Benjamin Franklin said, when they say the story goes, they ask him what kind of government that we're going to get, and he says a republic if you can keep it. Or John Adams talks so much about this idea that this government is only for a moral people. And so what I worry about this idea, and I can be swayed on it. I'm very open to it. I would like to not believe this, but I think um, that it was a lack of consciousness about what was happening, or almost a forfeit of our duty as citizens to protect ourselves in past generations, that allowed these evil people to take power and then begin inflicting like this serious morality upon us.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. I, I think there's truth to that when you say that there's a obviously Benjamin Franklin Thoreau and Adams saying that it's for moral people. That's all true. But I think at the heart of the issue, like, what is the government? People say, oh, the government is the people. It's like, no, it's not. Look, like, the government is not ma and pa who run a grocery store down the road from you. They're
Mm-hmm.
not the government. Even though they're the people and they vote, they're not the government. The government are the bureaucrats, the executives, the judges, the paper pushers, the person that holds you up at the DMV for 3 hours because you missed one document. That's the government. And those people are who they're referring to. They have to be moral. They have to be good. If they can keep the republic, then that's what we have. That's what Benjamin Franklin was saying. That's what Adams meant. That's where we went wrong. We went wrong when we let Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Delano Roosevelt get corrupted by financial institutions, by the banks, by subversive elements in their administrations, by subversive elements in their executive branch, communists, Bolsheviks, and even Lincoln had a dialogue with Karl Marx at a time. So I'm not,
Mm.
you have Straussian guys that just like worship at the feet. I actually have a picture of Abraham Lincoln across from me right here because my buddy is a big fan of Lincoln. and it's sitting right there. And so every time I sit down, I have to look at Lincoln, but I kind of see that. So no, I think that they're generally right. I think you're generally right that we screwed it up. But I think it's the fault of the administrative state, not the fault of the everyday person, not the fault of my parents who are boomers, not the fault of your parents or anybody else's parents.
Right.
It's of the administrators. They failed us, and that's why we have to take them over, kick them out, get them out, and keep kicking people out until we get what we want, frankly. And that's what happens in political movements. The NRX sphere has had this kind of big dialogue, which I kind of tuned out of because I'm so tired of it. The like constant like just shit throwing over there about like whether we should present a positive vision or we should just get them out. And we can make a positive vision after we push them out. I agree. I think that that's true. So once we get in there, we can fix the mess, and who knows what that will look like. But generally, it's the fault of the regime. It's the fault of the administrators.
Right. I think that's a very fair and good distinction to make. So, because like my thinking there is like in the Federalist Papers, it says that ambition counteracts ambition. Like their vision for how this government would work and how it would remain moral is ambition would counteract ambition, and so it was reliant upon good, moral, righteous people to be like virtuous people to be ambitious to counteract the ambition of people who would like to take it over. And I think you see like a good example of this is Andrew Jackson. This is a time when talk about the bankers earlier. Maybe you can check this off your list now that we have this conversation. The bankers have these ambitions. The financial interests have, and the trade, the merchant class, whoever has these ambitions in the government, and you have somebody like Andrew Jackson come along who is willing to counteract that on I think we would probably agree on like in a virtuous position, and he breaks up the bank. He refuses to renew its charter and that sort of thing. So let's see, and then briefly, earlier, to go back to the APU like mission and the purpose. Earlier, you said that you want to support the Trump mission, the Trump agenda, while tweaking it in certain ways, revising it specifically in the social area. So tell me about lessons that we or that you have learned from Trump, from the failures of Trump, from the successes of Trump, and then candidates or people, organizations, whoever that you see that are doing things right, that have learned from those lessons and are carrying on the mantle in a positive way.
Oh gosh. People that are doing it right, far and few between. There's some people that have a good idea. I'll tell you who isn't. FPI, America First Policy Institute, is not doing it right. There are some good actors in there, but most of them are bad. That's like Rick Rowland's things. That's where a lot of former Trump admin people went. Who's doing it right? People talking about it online. Pedro Gonzalez gets it right. Andrew Kloster gets it right. He was on the American Moment podcast, Moment of Truth, a little while ago, which is talk about a boring podcast. They do it right, but it's really for like DC nerds, unfortunately. But the lessons from the Trump administration is just like don't trust anybody ever. Especially if they are like in politics for a long time, especially if they're like in the corporate world for a long time. Don't trust any like high-ranking military officials like Mad Dog Mattis and David Petraeus. And I came from North Carolina. I'm a big military guy. Fort Bragg, largest military base in the United States. I grew up there. I moved away about a year and a half ago. But so I had friends and family members who were in the airborne, and so when I heard that David Petraeus was having an increased role in the Trump admin, or when Mad Dog Mattis, the Marine leader, was having an increased role, and it comes out in 2018, 2019, obviously Syria withdrawal in Afghanistan, they're just screwing us over. You see Rex Tillerson. I should have known. I went back and listened to a clip from 2017 when it was announced that Rex Tillerson was going to be the Secretary of State, and Fox Business was just like so excited. They were so happy, and we should have known back then that this would have been a mistake, that the appointments would have been horrible. But the biggest thing we can learn from the Trump admin is to vet your people well. Know who you're working with. and, you know, kind of ignore anybody else because they're snakes. And most importantly, fire 88% of the bureaucracy.
Absolutely.
Pass that F and fire the bureaucracy and replace them with your guys. Which is by the way what Andrew Jackson did, and they called it the spoil system. Which really, when you elect a government, which is what the American people do, they got this right in the United Kingdom. By the way, it's not we're electing Boris Johnson; it's we're electing the conservative government.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we're, we're not going to just replace, you know, the president, but we should be replacing everybody that works underneath the president. But we have not done that since like Teddy Roosevelt in the early 1900s. So we need to bring that back.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. That's something that I think about a lot is this the difference between the state and the government. And while there is benefits to having the president as the head of state and the head of government, it is a little bit now you see an alternative problem that they have in the United Kingdom where they have the queen or the king who is the head of state, and they commission the prime minister to form a government in the name of the state. So you have continuity of state, and then these governments which are cycled through as the people please, or you know if the monarch chooses to do something different, they can form it without the people's consent. That's a whole different discussion.
Waiting for Queen Elizabeth to come in clutch and to just like kick the whole government out and just
Yeah, hopefully, yeah,
no
maybe
lie.
maybe before she goes, maybe who knows? We can pray, but or maybe Prince, what is his name, the youngest one? Maybe he'll be base. We don't know.
Andrew, Charles, I don't know. Who cares?
I don't
We
know.
left them a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah, so true. Anyway, well, I think that about does it. I think that was a great discussion. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on today. Briefly tell the audience where they can find you if for some reason they don't already follow you.
Yeah, I would really just recommend, you know, American Populist Union, at Populist Union, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. But if you want to follow me, it's like, I don't know. I think it's at I'm David NC underscore APU on Twitter. That's like the place to go. That's like where I'm at. I'm also on YouTube under DC Perspective. That was like my old name because my initials are DC. Not because I am from DC. So that's where it's at.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to having you on in the future to talk about the next steps that you're taking at APU. I think y'all are doing great work. So be sure to keep that up, and thanks again for coming on today.
So I'm very excited. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great rest of your afternoon. All right. Well, that was David Carlson, president of APU. I think it was a good discussion. We were having some trouble with the audio there. I think that was a problem from Discord. I think that Discord was giving me an issue there. Wasn't really much that I could do on the fly. Before the stream started, it was going well, so maybe some combination of the stream, OBS, Discord gave me an issue there. Who knows what it is, but hopefully next time we'll have that figured out. Maybe we'll use a different program or something. Maybe do a private test stream. I do plan to have more guests on in the future, so if you'd like to see anybody in particular, feel free to DM me on Twitter or drop a comment in the below these videos, and I'll definitely look into that. And if it's a good guess, if I think it'd be a good fit, if I think it'd be a good show, then we can work to get those people on. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the super chats now, and then we will move on. All right. Upper Cat Productions with $2 Canadian. Interesting. Says your show is boring. Well, thanks for the money, doofus. $2 Canadian. I think that says all you need to know right there. Luca Cacciatore with $5 super chat. Thank you very much, Luca. Says troll face. Thanks for that is what Luca would super chat. Yeet Peterson with $5. Thank you very much. My good old friend Yeet Peterson says Jake Lloyd towers over his haters. That's true. A lot of people talk about they say, they have all these comments about my appearance or whatever, but I'm like 6'1" and like 215 pounds of muscle. So, make jokes at your own apparel. Looks like we had a couple of diamonds on D Live. Proper Boy sent one, and Peep4 sent one, but I don't think that I can see those. Unfortunately, those go away on D Live at a certain point. So that's that. We'll go to Entropy now. Thank you very much to Entropy Chatters. KP with $3 says, Lloyd, I don't know what that means. Thanks for the $3. Kusi Friends, excuse me, says 07. Thank you very much. 07 back to you, QC, for the $20 super chat. We appreciate QC here. And then Diligent with $5. Thank you very much, Diligent. Says, good interview. Hope to see more of these in the future. Well, I agree. I think it was great. I wish that maybe in a different format, given today, I was kind of rushing and stuff. I think there's a lot of good conversation that me and David can have in the future. He's a very smart guy. He's very smart guy, and he has the right takes. A lot of people get it kind of like halfway right, like they're right about one thing, but then they have cringe opinions on the other. And I think that David is one of these people who's very solid all the way around. So we're looking forward to having him on again in the future. All right, well, I think that does it for the super chats today. We'll go ahead and refresh and just make sure. All right. Well, thank you very much for tuning in today for this episode of the Jake Lloyd Show. That was David Carlson, the president of APU. Be sure to go follow him at Populist Union on all the social media sites. Great guy. They're all doing great work over there at APU, and so we look forward to further discussions with them. So anyway, have a great rest of your evening. I look forward to seeing you on Monday. Maybe I don't know. I'm not promising I'll do anything tomorrow. I know that I owe a stream. So, but have a great rest of your night. Enjoy the things to come this weekend. And I will see you on Monday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. 5 p.m. Let's shoot for 5 p.m. Let's see. All right. Well, God bless and have a great evening.